All right, so we've been working on square roots and irrational numbers, and everything up to this point has been for a perfect square. Now, in a real world situation, probably not all of them are going to be perfect squares. So we need to kind of talk about when they're not perfect squares, what happens. So when they're not perfect squares, they become irrational, meaning those are those ones that go on forever. They cannot be written as a fraction. They're a puker. They just keep spewing out numbers. And so we have to kind of hone in on exactly where these perfect squares are. Now, you're going to need that chart, your multiplication chart that you highlighted. I have mine attached here because we're going to need it today. So here we go. So it says between what two consecutive integers is. Consecutive integers means the following number following a logical or sequential order. Example, like 3 and 4 are consecutive integers, 11 and 12. So right next to each other, -3 and -2. So the first one says the square root of 8. Now, if we go to our chart, so please go to your chart, you will see perfect squares. There are not anyone that says 8. There's a 1, there's a 4, and a 9. So I have to figure between what two consecutive integers, and I'm going to kind of highlight this right here. Closest integer are we talking? But the square root of 8 is between 4 and 9. So I'm going to say square root of 8, because 8, the number, is between the square root of 4 and the square root of 9, because 8 falls right in between, right? Now, those are the square roots, or those are the perfect squares it's between. So now I have to figure out what is the integer, or the perfect square of 4, and that's 2. What is the perfect square of 9, and that's 3. So the two closest integers, or the two integers that the square root of 8 is between 2 and 3. Okay, you can't leave it as the perfect squares. We're talking closest consecutive integers. All right, so square root of 18. So we go back to our chart, square root of 18. So 18 is not a perfect square, but it's between 16 and 25. Would 18 fall between there? 16, 17, 18. Yep, it's between those two numbers. So that means it's between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. So it's between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. And so what is the square root of 16? The square root of 16 is 4. And the square root of 25 is 5. Those are the consecutive integers it's between. All right, so let's look at 68. 68 is not a perfect square, but it's going to be between 64 and 81. 68. So if I counted 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, there it is. It's going to fall between those two numbers. So it's between the perfect square of 64 and 81. But those aren't our answers because those are the perfect squares they're between. Now I need the square root of 64, which is 8, and the square root of 81, which is 9. So the two consecutive integers that 68 is between, because it's going to fall somewhere in there, is between 8 and 9. 43. And again, I would stop the video if I were you and try them out yourself. 43 is going to be between 36 and 49. So between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. Square root of 36 is 6, and the square root of 49 is 7. And then 327, ooh, that's way down here, 327. It's going to be between 324 and 361. So 324 and 361. And if you didn't look, the square root of 324 is 18. The square root of 361 is 19. So it is between 18 and 19. So if you're asked the consecutive integers, that's what we're talking about. So now we're going to take it one step further. And now we're going to estimate to the nearest integer. So it's very similar to what we were just doing right here, but now we're going to be a little more specific on which one it's closest to. So the square root of 8. We really already did it here. So it's the exact same thing. It's between the square root of 4 and the square root of 9. But between the square root of 4, we have the square root of 5, we have the square root of 6, we have the square root of 7, and we have the square root of 8. And then we have the square root of 9. Well, the square root of 8 is right here. Now, take the perfect square of 4, and that would be 2, just like we had up here. The perfect square of 9 is 3. And where is the square root of 8 closest to? So the square root of 8 is right here. We go from 4 all the way to 9. So this part right here, I'm going to put it in red, would be like halfway. This would be like 2.5. Is the square root of 8 closer to 3 or closer over here to 2? Well, obviously it's closer to 3. So the nearest integer would be right here, 3. So let's do the square root of 51. Now I'm going to draw an arrow. Let's draw it in blue. I'm going to draw it down here because I need a little bit more room. So we're looking at the square root of 51. So if I go down here to my chart, 51, and I'm going to do some erasing because I've got a whole bunch of marks on here. So let me kind of start over a little bit. So the square root of 51. So that's going to be between 49 and 64. So let me start there. So I have the square root of 51. I'm just going to rewrite it so I have some more room. And it's between 49 and 64. So now I need to kind of go between. So it'd be 49 and 50 and 51 and 52 and 53. And you don't have to write all these down in your notes if you don't want to. 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, and 64. And trust me, I'm not going to do all of those again. But the square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 64 is 8. Now, where is 51? So 51 is right here. Now, of course, this would be halfway between 7 and 8. Halfway between 7 and 8. So which one is this closest to? Well, it's closest to 7. So my answer would be 7. Now, we don't really have to write all of these out because we can just do a few and know which one is going to be closer to just using our reasoning skills. So let's do the square root of 21. So we're looking for 21. I go back to my chart. 21 is between 16 and 25. So it's between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. Okay, so I have 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and I didn't even save myself enough room. 23, whoops, I wrote that backwards, 24, and 25. Okay, so the square root of 20, or square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 21 is, or 25 is 5. And we're looking for the square root of 21. So 21 is over here. This would be about halfway. So which one is it closer to? Is it closer to 4? Is it closer to 5? And indeed, it's closer to 5. Okay. So now let's look at 39. I got to kind of squeeze that in here. So 39. So the square root of 39, look at my chart. 39 would be between 36 and 49. So it's between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. The square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 49 is 7. So where is it closer to? Now I'm just going to start to think about it. 36. 37, 38, 39, and then it'd be 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, and 48. Well, 39, didn't I count it like right about here? So it's closer to, you got it, 6. Now, be careful here. Notice this one, it's a negative. So it really doesn't change anything. You're still going to look at the square roots. So I go to my chart, 86. Would be between 81 and 100. So I'm going to go between 81 and 100, but it's negative and negative. So I just throw on a negative sign. Everything else stays the same. So that'd be -9 and -10, and you have 86. So if you're counting 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, and I have to go all the way to 100, I know it's going to be closer to here. So my answer would be -9. And you just have to throw a negative sign in there. All right, last one, 120. So the square root of 120, and 120 is irrational. 120 is going to be between 100 and 121. So between 100 and 121, and the square root of 100 is 10, the square root of 121 is 11, and 120, well, I know it's right before here, isn't it? So which one is it going to be closer to? It's going to be closer to 11. So my closest integer is 11. So there you go, consecutive and nearest or closest integer. All right, good luck on your homework.